space, a brand new chart. For the head and for the heart, it's your journey, your tools.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're really digging into something I think affects almost everyone at some point: personal value, psychological health, and that feeling, that nagging sense that no matter what you achieve, it's somehow never quite enough.
It's a huge topic.
Huge. And our mission really is clarity for you, the listener. We want to unpack this paradox we see everywhere now. We've got more self-improvement tools than ever. We celebrate success constantly.
Achievement is king, right?
Exactly. And yet somehow anxiety, feelings of inadequacy, they seem to be skyrocketing, especially, for younger generations facing this relentless online world of comparison and, frankly, curated perfection.
It is a profound disconnect, isn't it? And this laser focus on external performance, well, it really suggests our whole cultural grasp of what personal value is might be fundamentally shaky.
Shaky how?
Well, we throw around terms like self-esteem and self-worth almost interchangeably. It's like linguistic shorthand. But it points to a much deeper conceptual confusion. And by not making those distinctions clear, we end up tying our whole sense of who we are, our identity, to these incredibly unstable external things. Our latest performance, our skills, what other people happen to think of us at any given moment.
Yeah, the sources we looked at really drive this home. That lack of precision, it creates a kind of psychological setup that's just inherently fragile.
Exactly.
I mean, if your whole sense of self is riding on, say, nailing that next presentation or getting likes on a post, well, the first hint of failure or even just mild criticism can feel catastrophic, like an existential threat, almost.
So let's try and build a clearer picture right from the start.
Yeah.
We need a framework. Think of it like this. We're dealing with three distinct, but often tangled up dimensions of the self, a kind of a psychological trinity, if you like, or maybe a self-valuation stack.
Okay, a stack. I like that. What's on it?
So first, you've got self-confidence. It's purely about capability. It's that belief, that trust in your specific skills to handle a task. Can I do this thing?
Got it. Task specific.
Then there's self-esteem. This is about evaluation. It's your subjective appraisal, your overall opinion, really, of your own goodness or value. And crucially, this one tends to go up and down based on how well you feel you're meeting certain standards, whether they're your own or, society's.
Right, the internal rating system.
Precisely. And then the foundation, the bedrock we're really focusing on today, self-worth. This is about being. It's that inherent unconditional value you possess simply as a human being. It exists completely independent of anything you do, achieve, or own.
Unconditional. That's the key word there, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And our mission today really is to show that if you want authentic, lasting fulfillment, genuine resilience, you need to make this radical shift. You have to decouple that intrinsic value you're worth from the external stuff, the performance, the achievements.
So moving away from a self that always needs proving.
To a self that simply is. That's the journey.
Okay, so to lay that foundation properly, we have to start with the term that causes, I think, the most confusion: self-esteem. When people say, I have low self-esteem, what's actually going on there?
Well, fundamentally, they're making an evaluative judgment about themselves. Self-esteem, if you look at the roots estimare in Latin, it means to appraise, value, rate, estimate.
Ah, so it's built right in. You're giving yourself a score.
You are. It's your subjective, emotional take on your own value. It's how you feel about what you think you are, and that feeling wraps up all your perceived wins and losses.
So it's not static, it's an active opinion we're constantly forming. Which is why I suppose Nathaniel Branden's model is so helpful. He broke esteem down, didn't he? Into two core pillars.
He did, and it's incredibly insightful because these two pillars really drive a lot of our behavior. Both need to be pretty solid for esteem to feel healthy.
What are they?
Okay, so first there's self-efficacy. This is the practical side. It's the conviction that you can actually cope with life's basic challenges. It's trusting your own mind, your judgment, your ability to learn, to adapt.
Yeah. So it's not just about specific skills.
Not entirely. Low self-efficacy doesn't necessarily mean you're bad at your job, for example. But it might show up as, say, a real resistance to learning new software, or just a general discomfort with anything unfamiliar. You might cling to old ways because deep down, you don't trust you can figure out the new stuff.
I see. And the second pillar?
That's self-respect. This is more ethical and emotional. It's the deep down belief that you actually deserve happiness, love, success, good treatment.
And if that's shaky?
If that pillar is weak, a person might often unconsciously tolerate poor treatment from others, maybe even rationalize it. It's like
Yeah.
a lack of self-respect creates this psychological vacuum,
Yeah.
and it can unfortunately invite mistreatment, which then reinforces the negative self-view, a nasty cycle.
Wow, so you really need both efficacy and respect for solid self-esteem.
Absolutely. They work together.
This complexity, it also reminds me of Maslow. He put esteem in his hierarchy, but he made a distinction between two different types of esteem, right? Which helps explain why, winning that big award doesn't always bring lasting happiness.
Maslow's distinction is crucial, especially when we talk about the achievement trap later. He talked about lower esteem. This is the fragile kind. It's derived entirely from external validation, getting recognition, status, praise, looking good to others.
Like your job title or your social media likes?
Exactly.
Oh.
And because it depends on things outside your control, what critics say, what competitors do, it's incredibly volatile, easily gained, easily lost.
Okay, so that's lower esteem. What's the other one?
Higher esteem.
Oh.
This is the stable, more enduring kind. It's rooted internally. It comes from genuine self-respect, a sense of competence you've earned, mastery over skills, a feeling of personal adequacy. It's self-generated.
Okay.
That's why, as our sources point out, someone can win a huge award, a massive hit of lower esteem, but feel completely empty a week later if they lack that internal foundation of higher esteem. External validation just can't fill an internal void.
So putting it together, healthy self-esteem sounds like it's about balance.
Yeah.
An accurate view of yourself, strengths and weaknesses, realistic expectations. It's not needing constant praise like low self-esteem, but also not that inflated sense of superiority you see sometimes.
Precisely. It's a realistic, generally positive self-appraisal. Right, so moving along that stack we mentioned, next up is self-confidence. Now, while esteem is that overall evaluation, confidence is, well, it's more practical. It's less about who you are fundamentally and more about what you believe you can do.
Okay, and the root word fidere means to trust. So it's trust in your ability to act.
Exactly. Trust in your abilities, your skills, your judgment to successfully handle a specific task or challenge that's in front of you.
And the key difference here from esteem is it's specific.
That's the critical distinction. Confidence is situational and contextual. You could be, say, a highly confident public speaker, totally comfortable on stage, but feel crippling self-doubt when it comes to, I don't know, making small talk at a party.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So confidence isn't global, it's domain-specific.
Yeah.
And it's built on evidence.
Yes, it's usually built on evidence from your past performance in that specific area. It's not magic. You construct it.
How? What are the components?
Well, broadly, 3 things feed into it. First, obviously, competence. You need some demonstrated ability, some skill you've actually developed. And you get that through practice, effort, learning from feedback. You put in the hours.
Makes sense.
Second, there's emotional resilience. This is huge. True confidence isn't about never failing. It's about believing you can handle setbacks. It's the capacity to adapt, bounce back, see failure as something survivable, something you can learn from, rather than proof you're useless.
The ability to get back up again.
Exactly. And finally, it relates back to efficacy, but in a very specific way, what Albert Bandura called self-efficacy. Here, it's the focused belief. I can execute this specific course of action needed to succeed right now. It's the I can get this done feeling for a particular task.
Got it. Confidence. Can I do this task? Esteem. How do I rate myself overall? Okay? Which brings us down to the foundation, the bedrock, you called it. The piece that should ideally buffer both confidence and esteem. Self-worth. This one feels different. It transcends doing and rating.
It does. Self-worth is that deep, stable, and here's that word again, unconditional belief that you are valuable, important, and inherently deserving of respect and love simply because you exist.
Just by virtue of being human.
Precisely. It's an intrinsic quality.
Yeah.
It stands completely separate from your achievements, your job title, how much money you have, whether people approve of you or not.
Can you give an analogy? You mentioned the stack.
Okay, let's try this. Think of yourself like a house. Self-confidence might be how well you believe you can fix the leaky faucet right now. Self-esteem is your overall opinion of the house. Maybe you think it needs renovating or you're quite proud of it today. But self-worth, that's the land the house is built on. It's the foundation. Even if the house needs repairs, low esteem, or you can't fix the faucet, low confidence, the foundation, the ground itself, is still inherently there and valuable.
I like that. The land itself. Dr. Christina Hibbert said something like, I am greater than all of those things, meaning the fluctuating evaluation.
That captures it perfectly. Your worth isn't the sum of your parts or your performances. It underlies them.
So logically then, worth exists before we achieve anything. Like a baby has complete worth without a CV.
Exactly. A newborn has inherent worth, totally independent of performance metrics. And maintaining that sense of inherent worth throughout life is what provides the psychological grounding, the anchor, that makes self-esteem less volatile. Well, if your fundamental value feels secure, then, say, getting negative feedback at work becomes a painful event, maybe a challenge to your competence in that area. But it doesn't become an existential crisis. Your core value isn't on the line with every single success or failure.
Okay, that's a huge difference. So if we want to cultivate this bedrock, this unconditional sense, what nurtures it? What are the internal components?
It's primarily nurtured through internal attitudes, ways of relating to yourself. 3 stand out.
Okay.
First, self-acceptance. This isn't about liking everything about yourself, but it is about embracing all parts, the good, the bad, the messy, the flawed, without harsh judgment, without feeling you have to fix everything immediately to be okay. It involves realizing that comparing your intrinsic worth to others is fundamentally meaningless. There's no objective scale for human value.
Letting go of the judgment.
Yes. Second, self-compassion. This is actively treating yourself with the same kindness, care, and understanding you'd offer a good friend when they're suffering or feeling like a failure. It's warmth directed inwards.
Instead of beating yourself up.
Right. And third, belonging. This is the deep internal sense that you are inherently worthy of love and connection, that it's your birthright, not something you have to earn by performing, achieving, or constantly pleasing others.
That distinction really clarifies it for me. Self-esteem seems to require criteria. How good am I at this? How well did I perform? And those criteria are often external or shifting. But self-worth, it's intrinsic, unconditional.
That's the heart of it. And the journey towards real psychological freedom is shifting from that mindset of, I am worthy because I aced the test, got the promotion look a certain way.
Too simply, I am worthy, period.
Exactly, full stop. Right, so let's explore why getting these concepts mixed up is so problematic, especially paradoxically, for people who achieve a lot. This leads us to what some call the high achiever paradox.
Ah, yes. The surgeon archetype you mentioned earlier really illustrates this fragility, doesn't it? When that foundational worth is missing.
It paints a very clear picture. Let's imagine this top cardiac surgeon. She's technically brilliant, thousands of successful operations under her belt. So, her self-confidence in the operating room. Sky high, data-driven, she trusts her skills implicitly under pressure.
Makes sense, highly competent.
But despite the stellar CV, maybe she secretly feels like an imposter. She lives with this nagging fear that she'll be found out, that she's not as smart as her peers think, that she's somehow fooling everyone. This points to low self-esteem. Her overall internal opinion of herself is negative, and is completely disconnected from her actual objective capability.
Okay, high confidence, low esteem. So what happens when the bedrock, the self-worth, is missing?
This is where it gets dangerous. If she lacks that fundamental sense of inherent value, then when she inevitably makes a mistake, maybe a minor slip-up in a procedure, a diagnosis that wasn't quite right initially, something human, it doesn't just register as a professional setback or a learning opportunity.
It hits deeper?
Much deeper. It triggers a catastrophic collapse of her entire sense of self, because her value was always secretly conditional on being flawless, perfect, the best. That single error becomes proof of the imposter narrative. It confirms her deepest fear. I am a failure. The mistake isn't just about the job. It becomes an existential verdict.
Wow. So the lack of worth makes failure feel like annihilation.
Precisely. Her core psychological safety feels threatened. That's a powerful illustration. Confidence can drive you, success can temporarily boost esteem, sure, but it's that underlying worth that acts as the anchor, the buffer, that lets you weather the inevitable storms of failure and criticism without completely capsizing.
And this constant pressure to earn your value through performance, this leads directly into what you called the achievement trap.
Yes, the achievement trap. It's essentially this deep-seated psychological programming that whispers or sometimes shouts that your worth is conditional. It depends entirely on your performance, your productivity, how much you get done.
It's that narrative we absorb, isn't it? That constant grinding, being busy, achieving things that's supposed to make you feel worthy.
Exactly. But it rarely delivers. Not in a lasting way. It just creates this exhausting state of perpetual effort, always chasing the next thing, feeling perpetually incomplete.
And it's not just a modern phenomenon, is it? This programming, it starts really early. Can we delve into those developmental roots? Where does this conditional worth idea come from?
It often gets laid down very early. deeply connected to parenting styles and early attachment experiences. Research consistently shows, for instance, that what psychologists call authoritative parenting, which combines high expectations with genuine warmth, empathy, support, explaining rules, tends to foster higher, more resilient self-esteem.
Why is that?
Because the child learns they are valued for who they are, their efforts, their feelings, their perspective, not just for what they achieve or how well they obey. Love and acceptance feel less conditional.
Okay, so what about other styles?
We'll contrast that with, say, authoritarian parenting, high demands, low warmth, strict obedience focus, or even neglectful parenting. These styles often, even unintentionally, instill a sense of conditional approval. The child learns, perhaps unconsciously, that love, attention, safety, belonging, they have to be earned.
Oh.
By meeting rigid standards, achieving perfection, suppressing their own needs or emotions, basically performing in the right way. This is where that direct programming happens. If I don't achieve, if I don't please, I'm not worthy, I won't belong.
And then we step out of the home and into systems that seem almost designed to reinforce that exact message, like the education system.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. School systems are, in many ways, performance evaluation engines.
Yeah.
There's such a heavy emphasis on rewarding measurable outcomes, grades, test scores, rankings.
Right, the measurable stuff.
Often over the intrinsic joy of learning, curiosity, or even the messy, inefficient process of figuring things out. This, for a developing mind, easily creates that damaging equation. Good grades, good person, valuable person. Poor performance, unworthy, maybe even defective. Your value becomes this fluctuating reflection of your latest report card.
And that doesn't stop at graduation, does it? Societal reinforcement seems relentless.
We're swimming in it. In many Western cultures, particularly high-achieving ones, there's this deeply ingrained cultural ethos linking personal value directly to work, productivity, economic contribution, the old Protestant work ethic idea.
Which can be motivating, sure, but
But it can also lead straight to burnout culture. People feel guilty for resting, for pursuing hobbies that don't produce anything tangible or monetizable. We stay stuck in this anxious state of constant doing and achieving because unconsciously we're trying to justify our existence, prove our utility, prove our right to take up space.
And then along came social media to pour gasoline on that whole fire.
It's like the perfect engine for conditional worth, isn't it? First, you've got the comparison trap on steroids. We're constantly bombarded with these highly curated, filtered highlight reels of everyone else's lives.
Yeah.
So we inevitably end up measuring our messy, complex, internal reality against these perfect-looking external facades. It just fuels feelings of inadequacy.
And it quantifies approval.
That's the other insidious part. Likes, shares, follower counts, comments. They become this tangible, measurable social currency. It basically creates a public, real-time self-esteem rating system.
Yeah.
Our sense of value becomes incredibly volatile, directly tied to this fleeting digital feedback loop.
Living like that, tethered to conditional worth, it must have real psychological consequences.
Absolutely. The effects are widespread. You see chronic emotional volatility, that exhausting roller coaster ride where one success brings this incredible high, but then a tiny mistake triggers a crushing low, maybe even despair. This breeds a crippling fear of failure. If failure feels like it threatens your core value, your very right to belong, you become incredibly risk-averse. You stick to the safe path, which ironically stifles growth and prevents you from discovering what you're truly capable of.
And the perfectionism.
Rampant perfectionism and burnout. Because if your worth depends on flawless performance, you're driven by this relentless need to prove yourself, to demonstrate your utility over and over again. It's exhausting.
But you mentioned something else, maybe more subtle.
Yeah, perhaps the most insidious consequence is this deep, gnawing feeling of perpetual incompleteness. Because the goalposts for enough achievement are always based on external, often shifting standards. They just keep moving. You get the promotion, but then you need the bigger title. You hit the sales target, but next quarter's is higher. There's no finish line. You're trapped in this endless race to prove a worth that feels fundamentally unprovable through action alone.
It's important, though, to see this not just as a bad habit, but, as you hinted earlier, maybe a misguided survival strategy.
That reframing is absolutely key if you want to change it. From an evolutionary perspective, think about it. Securing approval, maintaining status within your tribe, that was crucial for actual physical survival for millennia.
Right, being cast out was a death sentence.
Exactly. So early experiences, perhaps with critical caregivers or environments where approval felt scarce, can activate this primal threat system in the brain. The unconscious lesson learned is something like, to be safe, to belong, maybe even to be loved. I must perform. I must achieve. My utility is my worth. That ancient survival strategy gets carried into the modern world, but the threat shifts from physical danger to the psychological terror of feeling worthless or insignificant.
So we perform relentlessly to try and silence that internal alarm bell signaling inadequacy or danger.
That's often what's driving it underneath. Understanding the inner critic's narrative?
And the voice of that terror, that alarm bell, is often what we call the inner critic, that persistent nagging voice, which, as you say, might just be an echo of those old critical voices trying to protect us in a really unhelpful way. To tame it, we first need to understand its typical lines, its narratives.
Absolutely. Recognizing that the critic's voice isn't objective truth, but rather a conditioned, fear-based pattern, that's the first step to deflating its power. We can generally spot a few common destructive flavors or archetypes of the inner critic. They often blend together, but recognizing them helps.
Okay, what are some common ones?
Well, first there's the classic perfectionist. This voice demands absolute flawlessness. Its mantra is basically, if you can't do it perfectly, don't even bother. That 98% you got, that's a failure because you missed 2%. It loves all or nothing thinking.
Very black and white.
Very. Then you've got the taskmaster. This one is obsessed with productivity, efficiency, output. It's always cracking the whip. You're being lazy. Look how much everyone else is doing. You haven't earned this break. Keep going. It's driven by a fear of falling behind or being seen as unproductive.
I think many of us know the taskmaster quite well. It's like having a relentless internal manager who never approves vacation time.
That's a perfect description. Then there's the comparer. This critic's sole job is to measure you against other people, usually their highlight reels, and find you lacking. Its narrative is, look at them, they got the promotion, ran the marathon, have the perfect family, you're falling short, you're just not as good. It guarantees perpetual feelings of inadequacy.
Ouch. That one's fueled by social media, too.
Massively.
Mm.
Fourth, we have the guilt tripper. This critic wields shame like a weapon. It constantly replays past mistakes, failures, or perceived wrongs, making you feel fundamentally flawed or bad because of something you did ages ago. It often uses moralistic language. You should be ashamed. Decent people don't do things like that.
Holding on to past errors indefinitely.
Yes. And finally, there's the underminer. This one focuses on sabotage, often before you even start. It whispers, why bother trying? It's too hard. You'll probably just fail anyway, and then you'll feel even worse. Just play it safe, stay small. It actively tries to kill your confidence and stop you from taking action.
Just learning to hear those distinct voices and label them, okay, that's the taskmaster talking again, or there's the comparer. That feels like the first crucial step. It creates a bit of distance, doesn't it? A space between you and the criticism.
That psychological distance is everything. It's the necessary precursor to actually rewriting the script. You can't change a narrative if you think it is you.
Okay, so we understand the problem, the trap, the critic's voice. Now let's shift towards solutions. How do we move beyond just recognizing the critic to actively building that unconditional self? We need practical tools, evidence-based practices. You mentioned 3 key skill sets from modern therapy.
That's right. We're moving from diagnosis to action. And it's not about just willpower. It's about learning specific skills to restructure those core beliefs and nurture that inherent worth. The 3 main approaches we'll touch on are drawn from CBT, ACT, and CFT. So the first skill set comes largely from cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. The core principle here is treating those negative automatic thoughts, the inner critic's chatter, not as facts, but as hypotheses. Often they're distorted interpretations of reality that we can actually examine.
So it's not about just chanting positive affirmations, which can feel really fake sometimes if you don't believe them.
Exactly. Positive affirmations can fall flat if the underlying negative belief is still running the show. CBT is more about rationally interrogating and challenging the distortions in the critic's statements. It's like being a detective for your own thoughts.
How do you do that? What's the technique?
A core technique is using thought records. It sounds a bit formal, but it's incredibly effective. When you notice a strong negative emotion, like a wave of shame or anxiety, you pause. You note down the situation, what just happened, the feelings, what emotions, how strong, and then, crucially, the verbatim automatic negative thought, ANT, that popped into your head, for example. Situation. Boss pointed out an error in my report. Feeling. Shame 910. Thought. I'm completely incompetent.
Okay, so you capture the thought, then what? Put it on trial.
That's a great way to put it. That's essentially what Socratic questioning does. You subject the thought to cross-examination. You ask yourself disciplined questions like, what's the actual objective evidence for this thought? I'm completely incompetent. Okay, maybe the error itself. But then what's the evidence against it? Perhaps you recall reports you did well on, positive feedback you've received, times you handled complexity successfully.
Looking for the counter evidence.
Yes. And other questions. What would a supportive, rational friend say to me about this thought? What's the actual effect of believing this thought 100%? Does it help me fix the error, move forward? Or does it just paralyze me with shame?
Right. Does it serve you?
Usually it doesn't. And the outcome of this trial is what we call cognitive restructuring.
Okay.
You consciously formulate a more balanced and compassionate alternative thought. So instead of the absolute catastrophic, I'm completely incompetent, you might land on something like, okay, I made an error in the report and that's frustrating. But it doesn't negate all my other work or mean I'm fundamentally incompetent. It's a specific mistake I can learn from. Maybe I need to double check that section next time. It's more realistic, less emotionally charged, and points towards action.
That sounds much more constructive. Does CBT involve action too?
Absolutely. CBT heavily emphasizes behavioral experiments. If someone holds the belief, I'm terrible at meeting new people, the therapy might involve designing small, low-stakes experiments, like aiming to say hello to one new person at an event, specifically to gather real-world data that challenges that rigid belief.
Testing the hypothesis in the real world.
Exactly. Systematically doing things you previously avoided out of fear builds mastery experiences, provides concrete evidence of capability, and that feeds back directly into strengthening more resilient self-esteem.
Okay, so while CBT often focuses on changing the content of your thoughts, our second skill set, drawn from acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, focuses more on changing your relationship to your thoughts. It's about increasing psychological flexibility.
So with ACT, we're not necessarily trying to argue with the critic or shut it up. It's more about not letting it steer the bus, not taking orders from it. That's a perfect metaphor. Exactly. The core idea in ACT is cognitive diffusion. It means learning to see your thoughts for what they are, just transient bits of language, mental images, internal noise. They are not necessarily objective truths, and they are definitely not commands you have to obey immediately. It's about taking away their power to dominate your actions.
How do you practice that? How do you diffuse from a thought that feels really sticky and real?
There are lots of simple, accessible techniques. One of the most basic is just adding a simple phrase. So if the thought is, I'm going to fail, you consciously reframe it internally as, I'm having the thought that I'm going to fail.
Creates instant distance.
It does. That simple linguistic shift reminds you. You are the observer of the thought, not the thought itself. Another really effective technique is naming the critic or the story it tells.
Like we talked about earlier, giving it a name like the Judge or Gremlin George.
Exactly. Or even just naming the story like, there's the not good enough story again. When the critical voice pipes up, you could acknowledge it almost like an external event. Okay, the taskmaster is back with its usual warnings. It externalizes the voice, makes it less you.
I've also heard about visualization techniques, like seeing thoughts as leaves floating down a stream or passengers getting on and off a bus. You notice them, but you don't have to get off the bus with them.
Those are classic ACT diffusion exercises. They help you practice observing thoughts without getting entangled. Another approach is even thanking your mind. You can mentally acknowledge the critic, recognizing its misguided intention to protect you. Okay, mind, thanks for trying to keep me safe by flagging potential failure, but I've got this handled. I don't need the harsh commentary right now. It shifts the dynamic from conflict to gentle acknowledgement.
That feels less adversarial.
It is. And crucially, ACT then pivots away from just managing thoughts towards taking action. It shifts the focus from the often impossible goal of always feeling good towards the more sustainable goal of living a meaningful life. This involves values clarification.
Figuring out what really matters to you.
Yes. Identifying your core personal values. Maybe things like connection, curiosity, contribution, courage, kindness. What do you want your life to stand for deep down? And then the commitment part of ACT is about taking committed actions that move you towards those values, even if the inner critic is screaming and you feel anxious or uncertain.
So you act based on values, not based on quieting the fear first.
Exactly. You build a life and a sense of worth based on living authentically according to your values, rather than constantly chasing achievements or trying to win the approval game. Your actions become meaningful because they align with who you want to be.
Okay, so CBT helps us challenge distorted thoughts. ACT helps us detach and focus on values. What does the third approach, compassion-focused therapy or CFT, add to the mix? It sounds like it brings in warmth.
It absolutely does. If ACT teaches non-judgmental observation, CFT adds that vital layer of active kindness and soothing directed toward the oneself. And it's incredibly powerful because it's grounded in neuroscience and our emotional regulation systems.
How so?
Well, CFT, developed by Paul Gilbert, suggests we have three main types of emotional regulation systems. There's the threat system, focused on detecting danger, geared towards survival, activating feelings like anxiety, anger, disgust. Then there's the drive system, focused on pursuing resources, achieving goals, activating excitement, motivation, pleasure. And finally, the soothing system, associated with feeling safe, calm, cared for, connected, content. It's linked to affiliation and activates feelings of safeness and well-being.
And the inner critic and the achievement trap, they hijack certain systems.
They primarily overactivate the threat system, fear
Yeah.
of failure, judgment, inadequacy, and the drive system, relentless pursuit of achievement to feel safe or worthy. This leads to that chronic state of anxiety, stress, and eventual burnout, while the soothing system often remains underdeveloped or underused.
So CFT aims to deliberately strengthen the soothing system.
Precisely. Its goal is to bring balance by intentionally activating and building up our capacity for soothing and self-compassion, directly counteracting the harshness of the critic and the anxiety of the threat system. It draws heavily on Kristen Neff's work on the three core components of self-compassion.
Right, I remember those. What are they again?
First is self-kindness versus self-judgment. This is the active choice to be gentle, understanding, and comforting towards yourself when you're suffering, failing, or feeling inadequate, instead of resorting to harsh criticism and self-punishment.
Like asking, what would I say to a friend?
Exactly. That's the key question. What tone would you use? What words of comfort or encouragement? And then directing that same quality response inwards. Second is common humanity versus isolation.
Recognizing you're not alone in your struggles.
Yes. The inner critic thrives on making you feel uniquely flawed, like you're the only one who screws up or feels this way. Common humanity involves consciously reminding yourself that suffering, imperfection, and failure are universal parts of the shared human experience. It's painful, yes, but it connects you to others rather than isolating you. Thinking other people feel this way too breaks that illusion of being uniquely defective.
That sounds really powerful against shame. And the third?
Mindfulness versus over-identification. This is about holding your painful thoughts and feelings in balanced awareness, not suppressing or ignoring them, that's avoidance, but also not getting completely swept away and consumed by them. That's over-identification, getting lost in the drama.
So acknowledging the feeling without letting it be everything.
Exactly. It's like noticing, there's that feeling of inadequacy rising, or, okay, a wave of anxiety is passing through. You observe it with a bit of space, which allows you to respond more wisely instead of just reacting automatically.
And CFT offers practical ways to actually do this, to activate that soothing system.
Yes. Beautiful, often simple exercises. You can start with something physical, like soothing rhythm. Breathing deliberately, slowing down your breath, maybe making the out-breath slightly longer than the in-breath. This directly activates the body's parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, inducing calm. It's a biological intervention.
Calming the physiology.
Then there's compassionate mind training, which often involves visualization. You might cultivate an image of an ideal compassionate figure, maybe perfectly wise, strong, warm, non-judgmental, and imagine this figure directing kindness, understanding, and encouragement towards you, especially focusing on a part of you that's struggling.
Creating an internal source of compassion.
Exactly. But perhaps one of the most profound exercises, especially for tackling conditional worth, is compassionate letter writing.
How does that work?
You choose something you feel critical or ashamed about, a perceived flaw, a mistake you made, a way you feel inadequate. Then you write a letter to yourself about that specific issue, but you write it from the perspective of an imaginary, unconditionally loving, wise, and compassionate friend.
Wow. This friend sees your struggle, understands the context, acknowledges your pain, expresses common humanity, it makes sense you feel this way, and offers words of deep kindness, support, and encouragement without necessarily giving advice on how to fix the problem right away. It's about changing the emotional tone of your inner world from threat and judgment to safety and care. It's powerful practice. Okay, so all these therapeutic skills, challenging thoughts, detaching from them, cultivating compassion, they really prepare the ground for the next crucial step. which is moving beyond just fighting the critic's vague, sweeping attacks like I'm worthless or I'm a failure. We need to counter those generalizations with concrete, specific, undeniable evidence of your value. We need to build what we can call a portfolio of worth.
I like that. A portfolio, like an investor's portfolio, but for your own value.
Sure.
The critic deals in these big, fuzzy negative feelings, but the portfolio provides hard data, objective proof of character, capability, positive impact. Precisely. It's about gathering the receipts, the evidence that contradicts the critic's narrative. So first, we need the raw materials for this portfolio. And honestly, most of us find it way easier to list our flaws than our strengths, so this often requires some deliberate effort.
Where do we start gathering that evidence?
A great starting point is the you at your best narrative exercise. This involves taking some time to recall and then write down in detail a specific story, a real event from your life where you felt genuinely proud, effective, engaged, and authentic.
It doesn't have to be winning a Nobel Prize.
Not at all. It could be successfully navigating a tricky project at work, handling a difficult family situation with grace, helping a friend through a tough time, finally mastering a skill you struggled with. The key is the detail. Write the story out. Then, the crucial part, analyze the story. Ask yourself, what specific character strengths did I actually demonstrate in this moment? Was it perseverance, creativity, kindness, strategic thinking, courage, honesty? Reflecting on these concrete examples of your strengths in action is shown to boost both efficacy and positive feelings.
That's powerful because it's grounded in your own lived experience. But sometimes we're blind to our own best qualities, aren't we? Our internal critic filters things out.
That's very true. Our own biases, or just modesty, can make it hard to see ourselves clearly, which is why getting external perspectives is so valuable. This leads to an exercise called the Reflected Best Self Portrait.
Okay, how does that work? Sounds intriguing.
This one can feel a bit vulnerable, but the payoff is huge, especially if your critic plays the comparison game constantly. You reach out to maybe 10, 15, 20 people from different areas of your life, work colleagues, past and present, friends, family members, maybe people you know from community groups or hobbies.
And you ask them.
You ask them, usually via email so they have time to think, to share one or two specific stories or examples of a time when they saw you at your absolute best, or when you made a particularly positive impact on them or demonstrated a key strength.
Wow, asking for positive feedback directly, that takes courage.
It does. But the results can be transformative. You gather these stories and then you look for recurring themes. Do multiple people from different contexts mention your ability to stay calm under pressure, your sense of humor, your strategic insight, your quiet compassion? This provides compelling, objective, external evidence of your positive qualities that becomes much harder for the inner critic to dismiss as just you be nice to yourself.
And the hardest part might be actually accepting that positive feedback.
Often, yes. You have to practice letting it in, resisting the urge to discount it. It's data for your portfolio.
For those who like things a bit more structured, are there formal assessments too?
Yes, absolutely. Tools like the VIA Character Strengths Survey, which is free online, are excellent. It ranks 24 universal character strengths, things like bravery, curiosity, fairness, gratitude, hope, humor, leadership, love of learning, zest. Knowing your signature strengths, typically your top 5, and consciously finding ways to use them more often is strongly linked to increased well-being, confidence, and reduced stress. You're operating from your natural core, curating and using the portfolio.
Okay, so we've gathered the evidence through self-reflection, feedback, maybe an assessment, but just having the raw data isn't enough, right? We need to organize it, curate it, make it into a tool we can actually use.
Exactly. The portfolio needs to be a living document, not something you do once and forget. A central piece could be the positive qualities record. This is simple. You list your identified strengths, maybe loyalty, creativity, resourcefulness, empathy. And then under each one, you actively log specific, concrete examples of when you demonstrated that quality recently.
So not just I'm kind,
But strength, kindness, evidence. Monday took 10 minutes to really listen to my colleague who was stressed, even though I was busy. Or strength, perseverance, evidence. Wednesday finished that difficult proposal draft even when I felt like giving up. It connects the abstract quality to tangible proof.
Okay, linking qualities to actions. And what about tracking successes?
That's vital too, especially for countering feelings of incompetence. Keep an accomplishment journal or success log, and again, emphasize that these wins don't have to be earth-shattering.
Like what?
Finishing a task you'd been procrastinating on, handling a difficult conversation calmly, getting through a tough day without melting down, making that phone call you were dreading. For each entry, note not just the outcome, but maybe the challenge you overcame and the skills or strengths you used to do it. This builds concrete evidence of your capability and effectiveness, directly pushing back against those vague, I'm useless feelings.
That sounds really practical. And you
Yeah.
mentioned linking strengths to values earlier. How does that fit into the portfolio?
That adds the layer of meaning and purpose, which is crucial for worth. Once you've clarified your core values, maybe through an exercise where you pick your top 2 or 3, like say community, integrity, growth, you can intentionally look at your positive qualities record and your success log and see how your strengths and accomplishments are expressions of those deeper values.
So if my value is contribution,
Then your strength of problem solving used to help your team is a direct expression of that value. If your value is courage, then speaking up in that meeting, even though it was scary, the success log entry, directly aligns. Making these links reinforces that your actions aren't just random, they're extensions of who you fundamentally are and what you care about. It adds depth to the portfolio.
and this portfolio, it's not meant to just sit on a shelf or in a file, is it? It needs to be used actively.
Absolutely. It's a dynamic tool. Think of it as your personal evidence locker, ready to be deployed against the critic. How do you use it? Well, primarily as a reference. During self-doubt, when that critic starts its attack, you're unprofessional, you're a failure, you literally open the portfolio, digital or physical, and read objective proof that contradicts the lie. You read specific examples of your competence, your kindness, your perseverance.
Arming yourself with facts against feelings.
Precisely. You can also use it as a confidence booster before challenging events. You've got a big interview, a difficult presentation. Spend 5 minutes reviewing your success log, reminding yourself of past challenges you've navigated successfully. It primes your mind for capability.
And it can guide future choices too?
Yes, as a guide for growth. By reviewing which strengths and activities consistently show up in your best self stories or accomplishment log, and which ones genuinely energize you, you get clearer on what truly fulfills you. This helps you align future goals and choices with activities that leverage your authentic strengths and align with your core values, rather than just chasing external validation or doing what you think you should do. It helps you build a life based on intrinsic motivation, not just extrinsic pressure.
So wrapping this deep dive up, it really seems the core message is that so much of the modern anxiety and feeling of inadequacy comes from this fundamental confusion. We mix up our capability or confidence in specific tasks with our fluctuating self-evaluation, our self-esteem.
Right.
And we tragically mistake both of those for the real foundation, our unconditional self-worth. We get caught in the achievement trap, constantly feeling like our value is on the line, always needing to be earned.
That's the crux of it.
Yeah.
And the paradigm shift we've been exploring today, it's radical, really. It's moving away from a life spent desperately trying to earn worth through endless performance, treating yourself like some kind of, public company whose value has to be proven every quarter,
Yeah.
and shifting towards a life grounded in simply recognizing that worth as inherent, innate, inalienable, like that house foundation or the land. It's already there. You just have to acknowledge it and build upon it.
So what does this actually mean for you listening right now? What's the payoff of making this shift? Well, when your self-worth feels more secure, less conditional, it just frees up an incredible amount of psychological energy. Energy that was previously tied up in defending yourself, proving yourself, worrying about judgment.
It's huge.
And that freed up energy, that underlying security, it gives you the courage to take meaningful risks, to pursue things that matter to you, to be more authentic, and crucially, to face failure, which is inevitable, with more resilience, because your core value, your fundamental okayness, isn't actually on the line anymore.
That secure foundation really is the cornerstone of sustainable mental health, isn't it? And genuine self-actualization, becoming who you truly are.
Absolutely.
That achievement trap, at its core, it's often driven by that primal, somewhat misguided attempt to secure psychological safety we talked about. It's that deep down voice saying, my utility, my performance, that's what keeps me safe, that's my worth. So perhaps the final challenge, the ongoing practice, is to systematically, intentionally practice self-compassion to directly soothe that underlying threat system.
Bringing in that warmth and safety.
Yes. So maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. What one intentional small act of self-kindness or perhaps non-performance-based self-acceptance will you commit to today? It could be tiny, taking a proper break without guilt, forgiving yourself for a small mistake, writing just one compassionate sentence to yourself, something deliberate to start proving to your own brain through action that you are fundamentally safe and valuable regardless of what you achieve or produce today.
It's the strength to build anew. It's the light to guide you through. It's the choice to find your way. Starting here, starting today.
And that wraps up our special recap and all of Season 1, the Self-Esteem Toolkit. My genuine hope is that you've been able to take these tools and start building a stronger, more resilient and kinder relationship with yourself. We'll be back soon to kick off Season 2, which will be a deep dive into navigating grief and loss. It's a difficult but incredibly important topic, and we'll be exploring modern, compassionate ways to understand and move through the grieving process. If you found value in this first season, there are 2 key ways you can support the show. First, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the start of Season 2. And second, a lot of work goes into researching and creating this content. If you'd like to help support the show, we've set up a donation link. All the information for that is in the show notes for this episode. Thank you so much for listening to this entire season, and I'll catch you on your journey.